I have received a lot of interest on my egg white bread video that I posted a couple of weeks ago, and with all of that interest, of course, comes questions and concerns, and I want to address some of those for you guys. I've gotten lots of questions about the recipe itself and how to make it work if it's not working for somebody, but in this video, I want to focus on the cost of the ingredients. I crunched the numbers on how much it is costing me to make each loaf, and I also have some ideas to be able to reduce the price down even further. I recognize that not everyone is in the same part of the world as I am, so I know this information won't be applicable to everybody, but hopefully it will be helpful for those of you that are in the US. First off, I'll go over the breakdown of all the costs of the ingredients that I am personally paying right now. My biggest tip is to buy in bulk. That's a huge money-saving tip. Anytime you're buying pretty much anything, the more you can buy in bulk, the more you're gonna save in the long run. What I have been purchasing for my egg white protein powder is the Judee's brand, and it's definitely the cheapest to buy it in the 5-pound bag. Now, I know $69.99 is a lot to dish out for a bag of egg white protein powder, but I wanted to give you some numbers to keep in mind. If you're comparing the price of a 5-pound bag of egg white powder to a 5-pound bag of flour that you would use to make regular bread, you're gonna be like, this is insane. There's no way I'm gonna pay $70 for 5 pounds of egg white powder when I can pay $5 for 5 pounds of wheat flour. But keep in mind that when you are cooking with wheat flour, I have a recipe that I like to make for my family, and it calls for 1 pound of flour per loaf. So with a 5-pound bag of white flour, you can make 5 loaves of bread. With the egg white protein powder, you're using less than 3 ounces of the powder per loaf of bread. So I crunched the numbers, and with a 5-pound bag of egg white powder, you can make 28.35 loaves of the egg white bread. So 5 loaves versus 28.35 loaves. On the bag of Judee's egg white protein powder, it says 1 tablespoon, which is a serving, equals 5 grams. And there are 16 tablespoons in a cup. There's 1 cup of the powder in the recipe, so that means 1 cup of the egg white protein powder should weigh 80 grams, and that's equivalent to 2.82 ounces. So if you buy the 5-pound bag of Judee's egg white protein powder, you're getting a price of 87 cents per ounce, and that's gonna mean the egg white protein powder is gonna cost $2.45 per loaf. You probably know Amazon also offers something called Subscribe and Save, which is available on that egg white protein powder that I buy. And so when I do that, I'm able to get the price down to 83 cents an ounce. So that just reduces it a little further. I think if I kept adding Subscribe and Save items, I could even get a higher percentage off. So with the Subscribe and Save, I pay $2.34 per cup of the egg white powder. But after I go through all these numbers with you, I'm actually gonna head into the kitchen and test out another egg white protein powder that I found that's actually cheaper. If you buy it in the 5-pound increments, you can get it at 70 cents an ounce. And I haven't used it yet, so I can't vouch for it, but at the end of this video, I will show you my experiment with that, and if it works out, that's gonna be a really great option for getting it even cheaper. Okay, so far we have the egg white protein powder, and I'll just use the $2.45 number, the number if you just go to Amazon and buy the 5-pound bag. And if anybody is curious, 80 grams of the egg white protein powder is equivalent to 16 egg whites. And I did the math, and that means that the egg white protein powder is costing $1.83 per dozen egg whites. So yes, that is more than I pay for fresh eggs where I can separate out the egg whites, but considering, the work that goes into drying egg whites, I think the price is pretty reasonable. And then we have the price of eggs. And of course, this is gonna vary depending on where you are. The information I have is the price of eggs where I am. So it is very common for me to be able to get eggs for 99 cents a dozen. I shop sales, and they are on sale probably every other week just about. And whenever I see them on sale, I just pick up a bunch. If I end up having to buy eggs when they're not on sale, I pay maybe $1.39 per dozen, but it's still pretty close to that $1 a dozen price. The next ingredient is the allulose, and the recipe calls for 1/4 of a cup of that per loaf, which with the brand that I purchase, that would cost about 87 cents. I haven't looked recently to see if there are any other brands that would be cheaper, but it's possible you could get that price down just a little bit if you hunted around a little bit more. And then I just added on 5 cents for the half teaspoon of the cream of tartar and the half teaspoon of salt. It's going to be pretty minimal, so 5 cents for that. So with those 5 ingredients, that puts me at $4.36 per loaf, which if you're comparing it to a cheap loaf of Wonder Bread at the grocery store, sure, it's a lot more expensive. But the way I like to think about it is that this bread is pure protein. It's not cheap refined carbs that are like the cheapest thing to purchase on the planet right now. This bread is made out of almost 100% protein, which means you should compare the price of it to the price of proteins that you purchase rather than the price of cheap refined carbohydrates. And when you think of it that way, it really is not that expensive of a protein. I'll also just throw in here that protein is incredibly satiating, and adding protein to your meal is possibly gonna make you eat less, both at that meal and later on in the day. If you have a high amount of like bread carbs at a meal and less protein, you're probably, and I'm not saying this for sure for everybody, but you're probably gonna get hungrier sooner than if you were to eat your meal with extra protein and without that refined carbohydrate. I definitely have found that to be the case for me, and I know that impacts the grocery budget as well. Also keep in mind that if you are buying fresh eggs and separating out the whites from the yolks, that you are going to have 12 egg yolks left over to use somewhere else in your diet. So that $4.36 also includes all of those calories and that nutrition that you're going to be getting from the egg yolks that you can add in somewhere else. One more tip that I'll throw in here is that if you have a kitchen scale, go ahead and weigh out your egg white protein powder and make sure you're only putting in 80 grams. If you're just scooping out with a scooper, you might be getting a little extra, and that can add up. Also, adding extra of the egg white protein powder can make your bread dry. So weighing it out and making sure you're only doing the 80 grams per loaf is a good way to go. So like I mentioned, the price that I have been paying per loaf is $4.36. Now, if I wanted to get that price down a little bit, the first thing I would do is reduce or eliminate the allulose. The allulose in the recipe is great for the extra browning, and it gives a good texture and it enhances the flavor, but it doesn't add any calories, and the bread will still bake up without it. It might not look as nice, but you will still get a low carb bread that functions really well and has exactly the same amount of calories. So if you're looking to cut the cost, that's where I would do it. You can cut the allulose down to 2 tablespoons from 1/4 of a cup, and that would bring the price of the loaf down to $3.93. But if you want to reduce it even more, you can just cut out the allulose altogether, and that brings the price down to $3.49. I hope that breakdown gave you a better idea of the costs of everything. I know a lot of people had some sticker shock when they saw the price of the egg white powder. And yes, it is definitely an initial investment if you go and buy all of the ingredients at once. But when you break it down by how many loaves of bread you can actually make with all of those ingredients, it's not as outrageous as it seems. And I do recommend that if you haven't tried this recipe before, just buy 1 pound of the egg white powder or 2 pounds. Don't shell out the $70 right away if you're not sure if you're gonna like it. But if you do make it and you do like it and you decide you want it to be a regular part of your diet, then there are options to make it cheaper in the long run. Okay, let's head into the kitchen now, and I am going to experiment with this other brand of egg white protein powder, see if it holds up, and see if it's gonna be a good option to bring the cost down even further. The brand I'm going to be trying is the Now Sports brand, and I want to mention that in order to get the 70 cents per ounce price, you have to buy the 5-pound bottle, which is massive. When I went to order some, the 5-pound bottle was out of stock, but I really wanted to try it to see if it was going to work, so I bought the 1.2 pound bottle, but you do have to buy the 5-pound bottle to get the best price. Now, don't be concerned with this that says with BCAAs. BCAAs are branch chain amino acids. BCAAs are naturally occurring in egg whites. It's an amino acid, which is the building blocks that build up protein, and so they're just advertising that there are BCAAs in there, but not that they were added. If you look at the ingredients, there's only one ingredient, and it is egg white powder. I'm going to be cooking my bread in my Instant Brands OmniPro oven, and that is because my big oven is not functioning right now. We're having electrical issues. My husband is redoing all the electrical in the house, and the oven is not working currently, but hopefully it will be back up and running soon. But I have made my egg white bread in this oven before, and it worked out great, so that is not a confounding factor in this test. All right, now let's get this whipped up. Now to add in the egg white protein powder. I'm gonna weigh it just to make sure I get my 80 grams, and the 80 grams lines up perfectly with the nutrition facts on this new brand. 1/4 of a cup per 20 grams, so 80 grams per cup. There we go. So close. I'm gonna get my oven preheating while I spread the batter into the pan. Gonna do the same in here that I do on my regular oven. 325 for 30 minutes, and then let it sit in the oven for 30 minutes after it's cooked, just turning the oven off. My oven is a little bit short, so I have to not mound the bread up as much as I normally do, trying to make the top a little bit flatter. And actually I really liked the shape of the bread slices when I did that last time. Oven just beeped that it's preheated. Oops. No. So the batter seems a little bit softer than normal. So hopefully that won't translate to too much of a difference, but I did notice that. But we'll see how it goes. Let's see how this went. So, crazy thing, I think this rose more than my other ones, because it actually went up and touched the elements at the top. Thankfully, it still looks fine. It's a little brown on here, but I think it actually rose more than the Judee's. Feels nice and cooked. Here's a quick view. This side looks nicer since it doesn't have the dark brown spot. But it looks good, so I think so far so good. We'll let it cool completely here, and then I will slice into it. This is real close to cool, and usually when I get to this point, I go ahead and take it out of the pan and let it cool all the way on the rack just by itself. Interested to see what the bottom looks like here. Come on. Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Look at that. The top is definitely a mushroom. And the sides, I mean, they always sink in a little bit. Usually it's not a perfect square. Every once in a while I get one that comes out that looks real pretty. But typically they sink in this much. So I would say that's normal. Probably another 10 minutes and that'll be cool completely. So I am very happy with how this rose, and it didn't shrink too badly. Let's just slice it up and give it a final test. That looks gorgeous. I am very happy with how it turned out. I'm gonna give it a little test here. Taste is good, very clean taste, just like the other protein powder. It's perfect. using the Now brand protein powder brought the total price of the loaf down from $4.36 to $3.89. So that's a little bit of a percentage down. That's pretty good. I mentioned this in my first egg bread video, but I'll mention it again. If you put the loaf, after it's cool, if you put it into the fridge like overnight and slice it the next morning, you can get really thin slices and it's just a little bit easier to slice. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I hope it was informative. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you again in another video. Bye guys.